Sam, it is so lovely to have you on the She Can podcast. I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Steffi, thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I love this series and what you're doing with it. I'm Samhita Jayanti for everybody who's listening, and I have had a very varied existence. I grew up all around the world, lots of different country every 2 years. In fact, I've spent my adult life in the US, worked in a variety of different industries in finance and consulting and in tech, and then started Ideamix in 2018 because I was struck by how many people turn to entrepreneurship. It's been an increasing number now for 15 or 20 years, which is amazing. But I was also struck by 90% of those companies fail. And it seemed crazy that that was the failure rate. And we wanted to fix it. And hence came Ideamix.
Amazing, Sam. Tell us a little bit more about the Ideamix.
So Ideamix is a community centered around content and practical tools for either aspiring or existing entrepreneurs to help them problem solve in their businesses or actually get their businesses launched. So businesses fail generally for one of three reasons. The biggest reason is that they fail to find product market fit. And what that basically means is that they create a product or a service that isn't targeted to the customer segment that they're trying to access, and that they don't develop a good enough feedback loop to actually gather feedback on their product or service as it's developing. And the failure to find that fit, leads to companies failing over time. The second biggest reason they fail is for a lack of funding, that they're unable to secure capital. And, there are lots of problems in the way that capital is allocated. It mostly still goes to, white guys in hoodies, and not to women or people of color. And there's starting to be a change in that sphere, but it's slow and it's going to take time. So access to funding is the second. And then the third is people problems, co-founder problems. Sometimes founders don't get along and break up. And the failure to do that in a professional way that stewards the company results in companies failing. So we work on those and other problems that founders have with respect to scaling their companies and helping their businesses grow and thrive.
Amazing, Sam. I'm a very keen follower, of course. Tell us just very shortly, what inspired you to do this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I didn't think that I would start a company or become an entrepreneur myself. I got really intellectually engaged with this problem because I saw so many friends around me, people our age, who had had amazing jobs and careers and educations in the early stages of their lives. And then one of two things had happened to a lot of these people. Either they had continued working and were very unhappy with what they were doing and didn't know how to reset that, or they had stopped working entirely because, as women, I think we unfairly bear the burden of families. And it's not easy for everyone to continue working while they're also caring for their families. And, but families grow up and children leave at some point. And I got really interested by how did these women reset and how do they re-engage in their professional lives? Because that's such a big part of who you are as a person. And entrepreneurship felt like it was the answer for them because they weren't going to go back and, get a job at Goldman Sachs. And for the second type of person who was unhappy with what they were doing, it was because there was a structural problem, right? Either they didn't feel that the structure of the organizations they were working in any longer fit them, but they didn't know how to change that. And there again, I felt entrepreneurship was the answer. But we needed to enable that in an environment where people could succeed.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sam, what were your most important moments in your life, sort of your pivotal moments where things happened?
Yeah, I mean, look, the most pivotal one was my parents and brother dying when I was 12. And it was 1988. They died in an airplane crash, and it completely changed my world. And it caused me to moved to India and lived there for the first time with my aunt and uncle and their family. And they were incredible because they completely stepped in as surrogate parents. And without that, things would have turned out very differently. I would have been a very different person. And at the same time, it was a huge struggle because I was living in India for the first time. Everything was unfamiliar. I felt completely like a fish out of water. And while my family was hugely affectionate and enveloping, they were also quite smothering. And the challenge during that time was, and as you grow up, I think, is you want the love and affection, but how much do you want that to define your identity and who you are? And somewhere around the 10th or 11th grade, I had this realization that I had to get myself out of there to sort of discover who I was and who I wanted to be when I grew up. And that led me to come to college in the US. I was very privileged to be able to go to Harvard. And it changed my life. It totally sort of opened a new horizon of thinking, of people, of being back in the US. I'd lived here for a few years as a child. And so those were two kind of really key pivotal moments. The other was meeting my husband. We completely and totally fell in love, but more important than that, I think we built a real partnership based on equality and mutual respect and supporting each other through the good times, but also through the tough times. And every relationship goes through both those highs and lows, and the test is, can you get through the lows to get back to the highs?
Yeah, very true. And you are an amazing couple. Sam, what would you say is the thing that will motivate you going forwards, and where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah, what motivates me, Steffi, is people. And at the center of Ideamix is, I think, two concepts. One, our content, which we hope and thankfully are finding out does help people because it provides a source of inspiration and learning for them. And the podcast and some of the YouTube content and our articles in our library on our site allow us to have that impact at scale and make it available to a very wide group of people. So that's very important to me over this next 5 years, is how do you scale the impact that you can have on people's lives and help them to achieve the places and things that they want to get to. The second is it's really important to me to make this company successful and to bring our team along and to build a really amazing team on our way to getting there, so that everybody feels very much a part of it. There are already, so many people who work with us, my colleagues as interns, who have really enabled this. I could have done none of this on my own. And so getting us there together and sort of charting our own path, but building a successful company is hugely important. And then, of course, there's family and children who, with God's grace, are amazing and are in really good shape. And I love, mothering them and everything I learn from them as they get older. And that's a hugely important part of life too.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's a really inspiring story, and thank you so much for telling it.
Of course, Steffi, thank you for having me.